Hi everyone, my name is Courtney and welcome back to my channel. As I'm filming this, today is the first day of August, which means it is time for a wrap up. So today I'm going to be discussing all the books that I read in the month of July, and I read a lot. So first I'm going to go over the manga, and then we will get into the physical books that I read. So starting off, I read Sweetness and Lightning. And this is a seinen or adult manga following this young teacher who is a recent widow and is trying to care for his daughter. He's doing okay with the child rearing and cleaning the house, but he really struggles with cooking. He can't keep up with it and he just doesn't know how. And so this book is about him learning to cook for his daughter, and he starts a relationship, a mentor relationship with a high school student who he is a teacher of, and they cook together for his daughter. This is one of my favorite animes of all time. It's just very sweet and very wholesome, and these characters coming together and cooking, and so I was really excited to read the original source. This is a very episodic or vignette style graphic novel, so each chapter is its own little separate story, and I have to say I think it worked better in anime format because you have about 20 minutes to kind of go over one little story or recipe. And in here, it's about 60-ish pages dedicated to one little episode or one little recipe. And I just think that anime-wise, it was able to flesh out these little episodes a little bit better and make them more connected. And I also feel like that the anime was just more wholesome somehow. I think it had more of the daughter, and she was more of a prominent character in the anime, so it just made the story even more wholesome. I didn't hate this, but I don't think I'm going to continue collecting this series, because while this is good and while this was obviously the inspiration for the anime series, and obviously the anime series follows this closely, I am much more a fan of the anime and how they adapted the story than this particular thing itself. So this was good, it was cute, 4 stars, would highly recommend, but I definitely recommend the anime because it is one of my favorites. And after that, I read 3 books all in the same manga series. So I have Welcome to the Ballroom Volume 1, Volume 2, and Volume 3. So Welcome to the Ballroom is also one of my favorite animes of all time. It is a sports anime, all themed around the sport of ballroom dancing. And so this is also a series that I wanted to check out, read, see if I want to collect it and continue with it. And this is a series I think I am going to continue to read and collect. Basically, the story follows 14/15-year-old Tatara Fujita, and Tatara is a young man who doesn't know what he wants to do with life. He doesn't know where he wants to go to college or even high school, and he doesn't really have any passions or talents, and he really fears being that kind of person that doesn't have anything to do, whether it be a hobby or something more serious. And then one day he gets sucked into the world of ballroom dancing, and he instantly falls in love with it. So despite his unathletic body and his lack of skill and talent in ballroom dancing, he decides to join it, and he basically wants to go pro with it. Again, this is one of my favorite animes of all time, so I really enjoyed reading these volumes. The art style is gorgeous in here. I loved how movement is portrayed. The anime is a little bit more of an enjoyable experience just because watching a sports anime as an anime always works a little bit better just because you're seeing the movement. But this was really enjoyable, and I'm going to collect this and read this, and I'm really excited to get into later volumes where I can see my favorite character. The first 3 volumes follows about 2 arcs of the story, I would say. Fujita getting into ballroom dancing, and then kind of his first match where he actually is dancing with somebody for the first time. And so a little bit of a spoiler, but what comes next is the arc where he actually gets his own partner. I just really love Fujita's partner, so I'm really excited to get into that and to get into later volumes to see where the story goes. I'm still hoping that this anime will get a 2nd season, but I'm not holding out hope, so I'm going to continue reading the series. But those were all the manga I read this month, so now it is time to get into the novels. The first novel I read this month was Fevered Star by Rebecca Roanhorse, and this is the sequel book in an adult fantasy series, and I believe this is a trilogy, and the first book, if you don't know, is Black Sun. Black Sun is set in a pre-colonial America, but it is a fantasy world. And I really love this series. It's a multiple perspective series. You're mainly just kind of following these characters as they live in these highly political societies. So I really enjoyed it. It's highly political, there is action, there is a little bit of magic, but it is mostly about these characters and the political machinations. I didn't enjoy this book quite as much as the first one, just because this book was a little bit slower, but I really did enjoy the ending, so I gave it a 3.75 stars. So going in order, the next book I read was May the Best Man and Win by Zur Eller. And this was a continuation of the books I read last month, which were all queer sports books for Pride. This is a male-male romance story about a trans teen and his ex-boyfriend, and basically they both want to win Homecoming King, and the kind of crazy hijinks they get into because of that war/race, I guess, to becoming the Homecoming King. There are a lot of hijinks. It's pretty crazy. The tone is very conflicting because there's a lot of really serious topics with a lot of this kookiness, and from the get-go it was pretty obvious that there was going to be this tone disparity, and I was listening to it on audiobook, so I just kind of listened along and just kind of went with the story, just kind of knowing that it was going to be just very drama heavy. And I would say the best way to describe this, it felt like the novelization of like a Disney Channel original movie, if that makes sense. Like stuff that really doesn't happen in high school, that's very over dramatized, a lot of stuff that's just very over the top and just not really realistic to real life. Fun, but not like the most highbrow thing ever. So it was cute, it was fun. I gave it like 2 stars. I enjoyed it, but it's not like this amazing read, unfortunately. After I read this, I made a TikTok about it, kind of discussing similar books and just recommending other reads based on this book, and someone in the comments of that video discussed how the author has been doing some nefarious things, just kind of showing their whole ass on Twitter. You know how it goes. So I would definitely recommend looking into this author, seeing what he has done over the past couple months, and decide if you want to support him or not, if you're planning on reading this book. I'm personally not going to talk a lot about it on my channel just because there are other books that I can promote with authors that are not showing their whole ass on Twitter. So there's that. I think the next book I read was Vows of Empire, which was another disappointment for me. And so I did a whole book review discussing this book and the series and my disappointment with it. So definitely check that out if you want to get more spoilers or just more thoughts about it. But basically this is the 3rd book in a sci-fi adult series. This is the 3rd and final novel. I thought the 2nd book was not so great, so I didn't have high expectations going into this 3rd one, but it still was not great. I gave it like a 2.5, 2.75 stars. It was better than the 2nd book, but still, again, not great. This is a very plot-driven sci-fi series with like fun characters and kooky plots. It's very much just like a basic space opera plot story of following these 2 guys who are best friends, lovers, rivals, all of that, enemies even, as they get thrown into a political war between these 2 empires, and kind of them like defeating the evil empire kind of thing. That's basically the story. I didn't love this, didn't love how it ended. It was really hard because I love these characters and I love their motivations in the 1st book, so I really wanted them explored in depth and for them to really tease out a lot of the themes, but it just didn't do that. So yeah, I was disappointed by this, didn't love it, and again, I have a review. I think we're going to skip out of order for a second so that I can save my favorite books for last. So the next book I read was When You Get the Chance by Tom Ryan and Robin Stevenson, and this is a Canadian young adult novel following 2 cousins who are reconnecting after their grandfather passed away. So it's them dealing with the aftermath of this death in the family and trying to get like all those affairs in order, and then the 2 teens trying to get to Pride in Toronto, I believe, and you're following both of the teens' perspectives, and there's a lot going on in this story. So there's the whole Pride plot, there's the whole like reconnecting plot, the cousins not really getting along and having different viewpoints, and then them dealing with their own internal problems, and there's also like this mystery plot of why the parents aren't getting along together anymore, the brother and sister of the 2 cousins, why they're not getting along. And this book is pretty short, but I felt like it really covered all these plot points really well. I really liked how it interwove all the little story parts. Talia is kind of this stick in the mud character who's grieving a broken relationship, while Mark is this non-committal, very annoying, maybe stuck up a little bit character. And so I really liked how they played against each other, how they didn't get along, how it really drove them into a lot of queer discourse. I will say the queer discourse does feel a couple years old already, so it might be hard to sympathize, especially with Mark because he has some harmful thinkings. But overall, I really enjoyed these characters, their coming of age, their reckoning with things, and I thought it was pretty well done. I gave this like a 3.75 4 stars. And another great thing to note about this book is that there are queer elders in here talking about their history history, talking about their own identities, kind of guiding these characters, which is just something I always love to see. So yes, it was fun, it was cute. I think more people should read this. I think they will like it. Again, it's a story that has a lot of elements, a lot of plot points, but I think it covers them fairly decently, especially for such a short read. And the next book I read this month was Akata Woman by Nnendi Okorafor, which is the third book in this young adult fantasy paranormal series. And basically in this world, there is a separate magical society called the Leopard World. And in the first book, Sunny learns that she is a part of this Leopard World, which is very unusual because there aren't a lot of people that are not blood connected to the world that end up having powers. And so this third book is exploring more of that world, and it's basically like a fetch quest novel. So Sunny and her 3 friends are off on this quest to go and get an item for a magical being. I enjoyed this novel, but definitely not as much as the first 2, and that's just more of my own kind of thing. I really enjoyed the first part of this novel because it's very slow paced. It's very much just like a day in Sunny's life, and it discusses like Nigerian history and politics, and so I really enjoy just watching Sunny in her own world, both the Leopard World and her everyday world. But when we get into the fetch quest part of the book, again, it's a fetch quest, it's very basic, and the other thing is that it's kind of like a portal world situation, almost like think Alice in Wonderland vibes, where you're going into a world that doesn't really make sense, that's kind of kooky and chaotic. I just don't like that kind of portal world story. So that's my own problem. I think other people would be fine with it. It's just a me thing. But overall, I enjoyed this. I gave it a 3.5 stars, and I'm excited to see if the series continues. I think it will be. I just really want to see Sunny's journey because, again, for the most part, I really do love this world and these characters, and this book was a lot of fun. The final 2 books I read this month was The Empress of Salt and Fortune and When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain by Nhi Vo, and this is a part of a series. And basically in this first book, we are following a monk who goes to the Empress's palace, or old palace, where she was sequestered as a young queen, to kind of unravel her story and figure out what happened to her. So both of these stories are framed by the monk finding out things about different stories and histories, and so I just really love that framing device. So the second book is an entirely different story than the first one, but still following that same monk, just learning a different story, a different history. This one is about clearing some misunderstandings about a local lore story, and I just really love these. I love the framing device, I love the writing, it's very elegant, very beautifully written, but not overwritten in my perspective. I just love how the story unravels, and I just love the world. It's a historical fantasy type setting. I'm not really sure if it is set in our world or not because there are like mammoths running around, and I think it is inspired by like Chinese folklore, and it just feels really different, but again, it's really enjoyable because of the writing and narrative style. And I don't know, I just love short novellas. I love conceits like this where we're following one character discovering and learning stories. So this is a series I'm definitely going to continue reading. I really enjoy it, and I gave both of these books 4.5 stars. I would highly recommend these, especially if you're fans of novellas, and these are probably going to end up on my favorite books of the year. But yes, these are all the books that I read in the month of July. I ended up reading a lot of books, and I'm excited for the month of August because I'm doing a readathon, the magical readathon, so there's a lot more exciting stuff to come. But thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments down below a book you read this month and enjoyed, but I'll see you guys later, and happy reading.